So very good afternoon, New York. I'm happy to be between you and your lunch. I hope all of you are hungry. And so let me, before you run away, it's I think my third time at NFT.NYC. And last year, when I spoke at NFT.NYC, it was 2019 or 2020. The folks who listened to my talk made 15x on their NFT investments. So hopefully, if you want to make some money, you'd stick around. We'd love to introduce ourselves and get started. So I'm Karthik Iyer. I'm part of the P2P Foundation. How many of you here know what the P2P Foundation is? Raise your hands. Okay, this is like one or two people. Interesting, interesting. So the P2P Foundation is where Satoshi published the white paper and the Bitcoin client, right? So if you search for Satoshi Nakamoto, the first link is a Wikipedia link, and Wikipedia will tell you the only place Satoshi is a web person is the P2P Foundation. So one of the first people to mine cryptos, one of the first people to trade cryptos. Been speaking about DLTs and Byzantine fault tolerance since 2010. And, early collector of CryptoKitties. I have a portfolio, advise large family offices, hedge funds. I have my own fund, which is called Genesis Block. I run one of the oldest companies in the space, which is called Blockchain Monk. So happy to be here in beautiful New York. I don't think there's any other city in the world with this level of dynamism and beauty and talent and everything else. So I'm very happy to be in this beautiful city. And a big shout out to Jody for putting together an exciting event. I've seen this event for 3 years in a row. And it just gets better and better and better. So happy to be here.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending. My name is Hassan Aldahan. In the past, my career spanned from owning a physical art gallery to having a brokerage company, an investment bank, and sat on the board of a stock exchange, the Iraq Stock Exchange, for its inception 7 years later. What the team did whenever we would first choose an artist and then promote the artist and do a catalog for them, get the news media to come in for his opening shows. There's a lot to do. But you also have to have the right type of governance so that you're fair with the artists, you know their identity, so that you actually are verified for the whole object. And you give the background to the artist, you give the catalog, and you actually in Iraq we had to get permission to have the government allow for this painting to leave the country, if it happens to leave the country. So the space is very familiar to me, and currently we also have a foundation. Our work has been, we have a great team. We started about 4 years ago for unbanked and underbanked communities. And having them, it would be a centralized system because it would be controlled by the governments themselves, but it's better than having to fill up the ATMs or having to deal with the money supply and demand. Having digital currency will enable people not to.
Should we speak about value? I mean, one of the things. I mean, the reason why a lot of folks are sitting here not going to lunch is because they want to make money out of the talk. Like they all want to retire in the next 3 years, right? How many of you here want to retire in the next 3 years? Everybody. So I think it'll be fun to speak about value, and you have phenomenal experience as an art gallery person. I think you've got a lot of value to add here. I think we could speak about that if you.
One of the things, I mean, over the years in my career, I probably have 600 paintings that over the years I've collected. I don't get to see them. I don't get to appreciate them. So if just my collection would be in the metasphere, not to charge people for tickets, but it gets me to enjoy them, and it gets others to, with everything that's happening with COVID, people don't visit each other's houses anymore. But if you have a virtual art gallery, you can put your collection, regardless, even if you don't want to sell it. So the value in its utility and the fact that you can enjoy it is great, and the fact that you can transfer it. So, and we'll see.
Bragging rights.
Yeah, not
bragging rights. We have a slightly more complex model when we build a portfolio of NFTs. And so the first thing is the number of pieces an artist creates, right? So we look at the number of, limitations, the number of pieces. Like for example, the original CryptoKitties, which I bought in 2017, are far more valuable than the latest version of CryptoKitties that have come out, right? They've maintained a fixed price compared to the older CryptoKitties. The second thing is, looking at things like Metcalfe's law, right? I mean, the value of the network is square number of people connected to the network. So we look at, the amount of people who are in the community of that particular artist, and how many, is it an original sale or is it like a derivative sale? So we have a very complex model to basically select NFTs and to actually build a portfolio because, you want to future-proof it. So in 2019 or 2020, I gave a talk in NFT.NYC here, and I spoke about Decentraland. Nobody really saw Decentraland coming, right? And now Mana is 15x its original price. And Facebook is, a $1 trillion company, which is changing its entire strategy to the metaverse. So I think value is a far more complex topic, and I think it needs to be modeled in a meaningful way. Like for example, if you're an investment banker and you do a value at risk model, or you do an NPV IRR, I mean, there are quantitative models that we use which are very similar, which has to do with asset ownership, asset history. Can you get like passive income from your art? Like for example, do people pay a license fee to use your art in, like, let's say a promotion or something? So there are about 15 to 20 dimensions that we use to basically model value, right? Because at the end of the day, as Ayn Rand says, value doesn't mean anything. It's value to whom and value to what. And I think as investors, one of the primary models as a fund is for us to have a meaningful number, right? I mean, to say, like, for example, CryptoPunks, how do we arrive at value? What is actual value? What is perceived value? Things like that. And if you're able to figure that out, I think there's a lot of money to be made in the space.
To me, value is always what the person is willing to pay for it. And you never give an opinion if it's not your opinion, it's what the person that enjoys it. That's the most important thing. Because some people might want to buy it as an investment, but my advice to artists all the time is that now they can have residual payments coming. They can license it for a certain amount of years and it will revert back to them. If it changes ownership, they can actually get money every single time that it goes through. So I tell them, set up a company, because after you pass away, it's better to just do things under a company. And ID is really important. So having the ID stamped in as an authentic piece is really important. So, I mean, you hear all of, Banksy, for example. They say this is a Banksy. Banksy's anonymous. Nobody knows who he is. So if I see an NFT of someone claiming to be Banksy, there's nobody that will say it's not Banksy. And
the beauty of digital certificates. I mean, the whole blockchain revolution brings in digital signatures and digital certificates where you can authenticate some of these anonymous artists. But you made a very interesting point, which is passive income on your NFTs, because you're buying these NFTs and now you can lend them, you can borrow them, you can stake them. I mean, there are tons of DeFi features that are coming on NFT, which I think will make NFT a more interesting art, right? I mean, today you keep money in the bank, it's negative interest rates in Europe. Mm-hmm. It's like 1% in the Western world.
It's always a good hedge if you have devaluation of currencies, or if you have high interest rates. It's better to go into assets that might appreciate in value because of their cost. But at the same time, it's also the rights. I mean, when you talk about the Bored Apes or the CryptoPunks, the people that buy them have complete rights and all the derivatives. But another person that buys from an artist can say, no, I don't want any derivatives. You can't change the color. You can't put it in a blender. I mean, the thing that made everybody so interested about NFTs was 5,000 paintings that sold for 69 million. But it's 5,000 paintings. So if you just do the numbers, each painting is like $3,000. I'm sure the buyer can fractionalize it, sell it for 10,000.
But this whole blockchain space is about scarcity, isn't it? Because it seems to be, the Asians, they have the yin and yang, right? The sign of duality. On the one hand, you have this infinite economy, with infinite growth, and everything else. On the other side, you have this blockchain world where everything is finite. The 21 million Bitcoin, there's 10,000 Axie infinities, right? So I mean, there's this duality that we see, and so would that be a huge driver of price? Because what we are arriving at is we're also going to publish a few papers in the next couple of months and years that are coming up, where the primary focus is on value. Because as you said, right? I mean, price discovery, market mechanism is a good price discovery, but there has to be something beyond it to justify, let's say, why an art by Banksy, which has like, let's say, 10 or 20 or 30 limited edition items, right, should have a certain price.
We used to do that with lithographs, and when an artist was his prices were too high for the market, he would do editions 1 of 10. And the formula was, if the original was selling for, let's just say 10, then each lithograph would be 1. But people would buy them for 2. So I'd laugh that they would be buying them for a more expensive price, but they wanted to have them because they assumed that in the future that artist's painting is going to be 5. So even if they buy them for 2, at 5 they're still, they're still going to make more than 130%.
It's much more than what the market S&P 500 would give you, right? And so, so going to the next question, Hassan, I think a lot of our audience would be interested to, have a perspective on how to build a portfolio. Like, let's say you're starting today, which is November of 2021, right? And they want to retire in 4 years, which I think a lot of the 20-year-olds want to do now. At least know one guy, Sean, who's sitting there, who wants to retire. Yeah, he's 26 years old, 27, yeah. And he wants to retire in 4 years by the time he's 31. So how would you go building a portfolio for somebody who wants to create a lot of wealth in 5 years? An NFT portfolio today?
Yeah, I mean, again, first of all, buy something that you enjoy. Second of all, you need liquidity, and the liquidity isn't there yet. The smart contracts are not Ricardian. We can't just print them out. You need someone that knows code and you have to audit that code. It should just be more seamless, and you'll get that liquidity when you can just use a credit card or a bank transfer, so that you get more people to be able to participate. But there should be, I love these types of forums, especially for the creatives and the artists, that you give them advice. You tell them, please learn how to do this. As art gallery owners, we had a role to do, and we would compete, but we provide a service. And with this world, it is such new that I think a lot of the galleries don't want that responsibility with the artist. Because if he loses his cold wallet, what are you going to do? So like, for example, one of the products that our team has is custody. And custody is important. I can still enjoy it, but it could be vaulted with a custodian.
No, absolutely. I think that also, segues into some of the interesting things that, you spoke about, which is getting liquidity, making it more accessible for people to buy. I mean, Ken's here. Ken's a co-founder of Emergo, and they are building a very exciting wallet, which is called the Yoroi wallet. I was speaking to him earlier today, and you could just buy NFTs right off the wallet, right? And so it makes it a lot more easier for anybody who has a wallet, just click and buy. And so I think that level of access to assets, I think will make these assets much more sort of prevalent. And I mean, we still don't see, I've been buying NFT since 2017, CryptoKitty, right? I mean, it was a couple of cents, and now it's just taken off. But even now, the access is not there because of reasons like what you're saying. Big institutions don't want to get in because they're afraid of custodians. They cannot hold assets of their own custody. So a lot of those problems are getting solved because, there's, companies like Copper, BitGo, everybody's talking about, holding custody and will and inheritance and things like that. You can inherit the art, you can write a will on the blockchain, and then moved on. So
Or
going
you can
back
just-
to
you can just have your collection in a trust.
exactly a trust company or whatever, right? Setting up a
You
trust
can just
company.
do a trust.
So
and-
getting back to the portfolio thing, right? So one of the things that we are looking at as a fund is to have a diversified NFT portfolio. So one of the things that we have is these limited edition collector items, right? So like let's say an Axie Infinity or, I mean, the CryptoPunk. So one of those things when they come out, we make sure that we go and buy it because we have a model. So we have the community, which is very important. So we see how big the community is. We see whether it's a primary offering or secondary offering. We see who's the artist, whether the artist has a track record. Fourth, we see the novelty of the art, right? I mean, what is the novelty of the art? I mean, is it, because, I'm 40 years old, right? I don't understand how the 21-year-olds are thinking. And one of the things I've realized as an NFT investor is that the money is not with the 40-year-olds, the money is with the 20-year-olds. Because they're the ones who are driving the market, right? They're the ones who are actually buying stuff.
They're used to it. My daughters are in college, but my son's is almost 12 now. And I don't want to tell you how many times I had to go get cards for him for Fortnite because he wanted the limited edition outfit. And he doesn't even play it anymore. He's doing something else. But and they start gifting each other. Like he gave me 30, so I have to give him 30. And it was just, they were just getting things that they enjoyed. So you're going to see the technology just makes things faster.
It's fascinating, fascinating. So one of the things that we have, Hassan, is this portfolio where part of it is collectibles, part of it is metaverse. So we have an allocation for things like Decentraland, which I spoke about in the last NFT.NYC. I mean, a lot of people didn't take it seriously. Now the mana has gone up 15x, massively, massively. So the third one is game because, I mean, in my generation, so 10 years ago when I was, when I got into Bitcoin 10, 11 years ago, Bitcoin was a big deal at the time, right? And now nobody even talks about it because it's sort of infrastructure. Everybody has 5% allocation on cryptos. The next big thing is NFTs, which is the next generation, right? I mean, so game collectibles, like guns and, swords and things like that, and buying plots of land in Decentraland, buying houses in Decentraland, $1-2 million. So I think those are prime real estate, which I think will go 10, 15, 20x, because all the big brands will have to go into metaverses, because that's where most of the commerce is happening now. That's where most of the people are hanging out. From my experience of hanging out with 15, 16-year-olds, because I no longer spend time with folks like you, unfortunately. Well, I would love to. But I see a lot more value hanging out with 15, 16-year-olds, like your son, perhaps, your son's friends, because they're the ones who are determining what's coming next. And they're all spending time in Decentraland. They're spending time in Second Life. They're spending time in all these gaming, portals. So the third aspect of our portfolio has in-game components. Finally, of course, the metaverse. We buy land, we buy various things in metaverses. So I think this is a interesting portfolio design, right? To hedge for the future. 4 or 5 years from now, you'll have art, you'll have collectibles, you'll have, a good chunk of metaverse artifacts, and then you'll also have game skins. If you're a gamer and if you're spending a lot of time gaming, it's going to be a massive thing. So this is how we go about building our portfolio.
And
What would be your recommendation?
I also see interoperability between the different platforms where you can take an outfit and more people will be designing, let's say, houses or pools or gardens. And what's unique about NFTs in general is that it's open for the whole planet. So in a lot of developing countries, when I do the work, you see some amazing people, but they're not able to come to market. And I think the NFTs will introduce a lot more, and it would mean a lot more for people in developing countries because they'll be enabled to basically earn more money and create more wealth.
One of the questions I keep getting asked, when I deal a lot with the family offices, like we're talking about like 10 billion, 15 billion, $20 billion family offices, right? In the Middle East, in India, in Singapore, where I spend a lot of my time. And one of the questions they ask is the market big enough, right? I mean, let's say they're putting in like 300 million, 400 million buying these collectibles, right? Will they have liquidity in the future? Is it a passing fade? You've seen a lot of bubbles in your life, right? I've seen quite a few bubbles in my life.
And it could be a write-off, because the market's been up, and you'll get a lot of auditors if you explain to them, lawyers and auditors, and you start to explain to them what's going on and get them into that rabbit hole. It takes them a while to get it. It's still new. So a lot of the family offices, the auditor will say, hey, you bought it for 10, but I'll only evaluate it. I'll take a provision of 90%.
Right. So, we came up with a artificial intelligence model, a regression model for calculating hype for NFTs. So we look at sale history, we look at whether it's primary or secondary, we look at visual features, we look at type of asset, whether it's a web domain, whether it's a collectible. So we have a multivariate model with various different components to it. And this artificial intelligence goes into different websites, pulls data, tries to look at some of these artifacts. It's a little bit of image vision, a little bit of machine learning, and it's a hit or miss, right? So human perception is just so different, right? I mean, like I was saying, Decentraland in 2019, and nobody really got it, and now they're coming and saying, how did he get it? It's just like, if you put in Karthik Iyer, Future of Money, there's an interview from Fox News' Heather Wesson back in 2013 where I talk about how Bitcoin will become a national currency in many countries back in 2013, and nobody really understood it, right? So the question is, can we quantify some of these things with models, right? Like predicting the future with some of these models. Are there enough data that's available? Because NFTs have been around for the last 4 years. So there's enough historical, statistical data to look at some of these things. And a lot of these websites are open and public because they have the contracts in the blockchain, so we can just go and see who's owner, what addresses, and all that. So have you done, sort of like your company, any efforts in sort of understanding some of the stuff?
We have intention of doing that, but mostly we're meeting mostly with gaming companies that are already successful to try to do that. But with that said, like you said, the brands are gonna be entering, and it'll be just another more advanced way. Because I mean, transport, I always would laugh to just to say with flights you can, or now with like rockets, you can get halfway through the world or spin the world in 11 minutes or something like that. But before, if you wanted to go, the fastest way would be probably horses, and you would change them every 50 kilometers for fresh ones. You wouldn't be able to ride. You'd be in a cart, hopefully with suspension, because without suspension, and you'd probably go next to the ocean. And then there were ships, and for technology. For whenever I go to developing countries, I say DLT, which is distributed ledger technology. And to explain to the older generation, I say, look, you remember these big Excel sheets?
Yeah.
And a lot of these developing countries have that, and everything is handwritten. And if you have a fire, they disappear. It's just, this is...
Going back to the final thing, I think we have 10 seconds left. So future, right? So one of the value that I like to add when I come to NFT.NYC, and I love Jody and the team here, is to leave the audience with something where they would make the money, right? And so what would be like 2 or 3 things that you recommend the audience to look into? Not exactly go and buy, but look into, for which they would basically get the value out of this conference. Like if you have to advise them, I have 1 or 2 things that I'll tell them, but from your perspective.
I think I would say buy something that you enjoy. Don't think about it as value, and think about it as something. Look at the rights that you have within the painting itself. You can do it on your own individually, or you can set it up into some type of company so that it can, like a trust, that it can be transferred in the future.
Fantastic. So 10 seconds with my concluding answer. So look at, I mean, I'm like terrible at art. I mean, I took art classes. I realized I'm not very good at it, the right brain, left brain thing. But I look at, hang out with kids, spend time with 15, 20-year-olds. I mean, try and figure out what excites them, what interests them. Look at games, look at buying plots of land in some of these metaverses. There are about 20 or 30 metaverses that are coming right now. just diversify your portfolio. Just buy plots of land, buy artifacts, and create a very diversified portfolio across 4 different dimensions, right? I mean, that's a good way to future-proof yourself and for, if you're a 25-year-old to retire by the time you're 30 years old. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate being here, Karthik and Hassan. I am Julie. I am Julie Lamb, the MC for the afternoon. So if we are going to find you in the future, because I know it would be really nice to be able to get some Q&As. We're rolling into the next portion of the program. Can people find you on the programs with all of your Twitter and your connection and these kinds of things?
Yeah, so I'm at Karthik, K-R-T-H-I-X on Twitter. And
Awesome.
blockchainmonk.com is my company. So you can write to me at karthik@blockchainmonk.com.
So it's easy to find them. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a round of applause. All right. Thank you,
Thank you.
gentlemen.